Pro Football Focus put out their list of top 10 defensive lines in college football this season. The Aggies weren't listed. How is that even possible?
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in the Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Yeah, I see this article from PFF, and you just immediately wonder, like, how is someone that tracks college football not have this defensive line as a top 10 defensive line in college football? I don't. To me, it makes zero sense. Now, kind of to preface that a little bit, Pro Football Focus, their numbers are really analytically based. They run a lot of numbers. They run a lot of those different analytics to kind of pull together their stuff. That's how they make their grades. But at the end of the day, I think that you kind of have to throw some of that stuff out the window. So, and that's kind of my point. I can see why the way they do what they do, Texas A&M wouldn't, but like they should not be listed. If you were like, okay, they're 9, I can live with that, because I don't think the analytics set up great for this Texas A&M defensive line, but the fact that they're not listed is asinine. There's no other way to put it. I mean, it's just, that shouldn't be the case, folks. I mean, you look at last year, of course, struggles to stop the run. That's on the defensive line a little bit, on the linebackers a little bit, but it's kind of like I keep beating the drum on this, but at the end of the day, the reality of this defensive line is a good portion of those guys were young. Now, I know that some people that make rankings, they like to see some older guys, some veterans, some different things mixed in. The Aggies have that. You have older guys. You have McKinley Jackson. You got the young guys. You got the Shamars, the younger guys. You got Walter Nolan. I mean, you got all these young players, LT Overton, a lot of the 2022 guys, a lot of guys from these last 3 classes, and all of them are talented. I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be 5 stars on this defensive line that are not going to play that much because of how good this line is. I mean, DJ Hicks comes in, true freshman. Now, that could be more because he's a true freshman, but how much is he going to play? We don't know. I've talked to some people. They think that he might, get some snaps, not as many as some anticipate. But, they're right there. That's a 5-star recruit that we don't know how much playing time they're going to get because of how deep this defensive line is. It's the teams listed above Texas A&M. Like, there's some solid defensive lines. Like, Illinois was ranked on this top 10 list. But frankly, at the end of the day, I'm going to say this right now. I do not think Illinois has a better defensive line than Texas A&M. I don't think statistically. I don't think looking at recruit numbers. Now, I get it. Some pushback I could get from this. I always try to anticipate, but it's like, talent is talent. It still has to pan out on the field. And I get that. We're going to kind of talk about that a little bit more in segment 3. There's our topic kind of applies to that. But it doesn't matter how good talent is. Sometimes, like I said, you still have to put it out on the field. You still have to produce on the field. So a lot of my argument here is based off how talented this defensive line is, just high school recruit ranking based, stuff like that. So I get why some people might say, stars on everything, which is true. That is a fact. But at the end of the day, they are something. And this defensive line, that's why it's so incomprehensible to me, is because at the end of the day, I've seen so many rankings of defensive lines that have Texas A&M anywhere from 3 to 9 in a top 10 list. So, but I've never seen a list where the Aggies are not listed, period. And then sometimes, I've seen a list where they'll be it'll be top 10 and they're the first honorable mention, to where they're basically 11. I can live with that. Now, this list, I didn't see an honorable mention list. I have to assume if they had one, Texas A&M would have been there. But at the end of the day, I think you can take a positive from this. And I talk about this a lot, but it's just from a person who's played, sports my whole life, playing baseball and stuff. It's having a chip on your shoulder means a lot. I think that this defensive line, I talked to McKinley Jackson about this in media days. This was one of the things I asked him, was I, myself, many others think that you all are going to be one of the best defensive line units in college football. And he was quick to say, heck yeah, we are. And so I think this is a confident bunch. I think they're very sure of what they can do out on the field. So when you look at this ranking, it's like, I hope those guys, I hope Fidel Diggs, who we talked to, I hope McKinley Jackson, I hope all these other defensive linemen, I hope they see this and they kind of have that chip on their shoulder saying, like, there is no way that we should not be listed as a top 10 defensive line in college football. Now, I will stake my claim that this Texas A&M defensive line will be top 5 when this season ends. And I feel so confident saying that. I don't have any concerns putting that out there. I really feel that this defensive line is that good. I think one of the big storylines, and once, like I said, this is going to be something we talk about here in segment 3, but one of the big storylines is people that like the Aggies this year, of course, myself, many others in the media that like Texas A&M to have a good season. You're betting on the talent, the 2022 class, then some of the 2021 guys. You're betting on that talent to show it on the field. I think they're going to do it. Many other people in the media field do, but at the end of the day, there's a chance that doesn't pan out, and that's kind of what we are. That's what we're banking on here. I am banking on this talent having that second or third year boost into dominant college football players, and if that happens, I think not only this defensive line, but this Texas A&M team as a whole can be one of the better teams in college football. The talent's there. We talked about the blue chip ratio. I mean, I think I got to keep nailing that into people's heads. I mean, the blue chip ratio is off the charts. This is a top 5 roster in college football. You just have to, coaching wise, coaches, you got to coach up the players. You got to get them ready to rock. Last year, you had a talented defensive line, but you struggled to stop the run. You got to stop the run this year. You cannot be Swiss cheese. You have to stop the run. In SEC play, the numbers were, just astronomical. How many yards opposing SEC teams ran against the Aggies? It was so many yards where, like, I forget the number, but it was a scary number to where you say, how did you win a single game last season when you see the number of yards they gave up on the ground? You have to stop the run. And it's something I went on the Spurs Up show the other day. It's a podcast about South Carolina. And the host and I were kind of joking back and forth about we were talking back and forth about like this the Texas A&M team. That's what we're doing. We're kind of previewing this game with matchup with the Gamecocks, and he was talking about like, dude, why is this team underrated? Why are people not high on this team? And I told him, I said, at the end of the day, I think it's just the question marks surrounding the talent. It's scary to national media. People don't want to be high on the Aggies. I think that for years and years, these last couple of years, people going into the college football season have been so high on Texas A&M that at the end of the day, I think that is kind of slowed down where people are like, okay, we've been high on them. They underperform. We're done. We're not doing this anymore. And I get that. Like, people that feel that way, people, if you're listening here, people that are national media covering college football as a whole, I get that. I really do see how that is. But at the end of the day, I just think you have to accept and appreciate the talent this roster has. And it's going to come down to putting stuff together. So, back to the defensive line, folks, like, there is just no way with how many players across the whole defensive line, how many talented former 4- and 5-star recruits you have, that this defensive line should not be ranked in the top 10 in college football. You got these kids got the frame, they got the size, they are big human beings. McKinley Jackson, like, I am a very big person. I don't know if I'm 6'6", and McKinley Jackson is massive. Like, I was like, I got to make sure that I am kind, because I think McKinley Jackson could like push me over and I would be like in the hospital. He's just massive. Fidel Diggs, same thing, more of a sleek build, of course, because he's a redshirt and he gets after the quarterback. But this defensive line, it's just, the players are there. They're huge. I'm hoping that a season ends in all sports. A season will end and something will go wrong, right? For every team. Alabama wins a national championship. There's going to be something that Nick Saban's going to say, hey, we're fixing this in the offseason. And I think that the coaching staff needs to say, okay, how do we stop the run? I think that a lot of people, like, they'll see an issue with a team. For Texas A&M, on the defensive side of things, it was stopping the run. That was the big issue. It's not like that can't get better. That is going to get better. You work on that all offseason. That is the one goal, is to say, okay, how can we stop the run? We know the coaching staff has been doing that. We know that's been just a trying to nail that into the head of these players of we have got to stop the run. I think it's going to be fine this year, folks. I just don't. I get it being a concern because we haven't seen it yet, but I just believe that they're going to prove that early on in the season. But then again, you have to prove it into SEC play. Last year, the Aggies were fine against the run against the non-SEC opponents, and then their numbers against the run once we got into SEC play was awful. So it's something you have to do. But I guess to sum all this up, folks, there is no way on this green earth that Texas A&M's defensive line should not be ranked in the top 10. Look at it as a positive. Look at it as if you could say, hey, these players are going to have a chip on their shoulder, which I always think is a good thing. I think it drives people to work harder on and off the field to become a better player, better student, better person. It's just a chip on your shoulder is a good thing in life. And I think that this can give that defensive lineup, especially after I, talked to McKinley Jackson in media days. It was very clear the confidence this defensive line has about what they're going to put out on the field this season. So this defensive line, when it's all said and done, is going to be definitely a top 10 unit in college football after the season, and I think could even work their way into top 5, if not the best unit in all of college football. Pool party was this weekend, folks. We got a lot of positive feedback from some players. We got a lot of interesting notes, some guys that might be on flip watch, a lot of positives, but no commits to this point. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to talk about our amazing friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. So, folks, the pool party, of course, happened this weekend. Preface all this, I want to let you know, it is 7 o'clock right now when I'm recording. So if a commitment were to pop tonight, well, then we'll talk about that then. But to right now, no commit. The stuff that was now, so great feedback. I mean, I wrote down some different quotes. People were impressed. Great weekend. It feels great to be back. That was Terry Bussey who said that. And speaking of Terry Bussey, I was frankly shocked that he did not commit this weekend. I talked about that on Friday. I really felt confident he was going to commit just based off things he had said. I mean, he was quoted early in the week saying, I'm close to a decision. It feels like every day he gets a new crystal ball to Texas A&M. And then, of course, he was in College Station attending the pool party. So I just thought all that. I thought that even maybe he might have been like a silent commit to where the staff was going to say, hey, wait to commit to the pool party and we'll see if we can get a big old roll of commits going. So I was pretty shocked when he didn't commit. Now, folks, I don't want you to think that when I say that, I still think the Aggies land Terry Bussey, which his last name I have decided is harder to pronounce than xylophone, which is like the hardest word to pronounce in the world. But at the end of the day, I'm not concerned with him eventually choosing the Aggies. I do think he still chooses Texas A&M. I think it's a little weird. I'm not going to sit here and act like I feel great that he didn't commit this weekend. It would have been a big boost. I mean, you haven't gotten to commit in a few days, which when you say that, we sound greedy. But at the end of the day, there was that stretch for a while where it felt like you looked on your phone and every time you do, Texas A&M's got another blue chip recruit. So like I say, I'm not concerned that he's not committed. I'm not concerned. What I am is I'm still very confident Texas A&M lands Terry Bussey. I don't know how you take this. It's like, I thought he was going to commit this weekend. I think those who saw all of his comments on social media, all of the Texas A&M people that are coming at you from the written form were saying stuff, he's was talking about commitment coming soon. He's going to be here for the pool party. So I was definitely surprised, but I'm not discouraged. I still think the Aggies land him. I mean, he's still, throughout these last few days, getting crystal balls. I'm not concerned about it, but, you do want it locked down. You don't want him going anywhere else on a visit and stuff like that. You want this done. You want it done before his senior year of high school. You want this all wrapped up. So hopefully that is done soon. We'll see. I'm hoping that's done soon. But then, when you look on a positive, right? So 4-star linebacker Xavier Atkins, who is currently committed to LSU, has gotten 2 or 3 crystal balls to flip from his commitment from the Bayou Bengals to the Aggies. And, I mean, Texas native, so, I mean, it wouldn't come as much of a shock. 6 foot, 215 pounds, 243rd best player ranked nationally in 24/7 Sports composite rankings. So, look at some positives here. I mean, I feel you can kind of get the vibe when a player is going to commit, right? I feel like most fans feel the same way. It's you got the intel, you got the people tweeting the eyes emoji. There's all kind of different stuff going on that leads you to believe when a guy's going to commit. When I see a guy take a visit, or when I see a guy on campus and then start getting these crystal balls, I think that smoke turns into fire more times than not. And I think that's the case here with Atkins. When is that coming? I don't know. Hopefully soon, because like I say, I do think like everything in life, momentum is a big deal. And I think that's the same on the recruiting trail. I think you get Atkins, maybe Bussy decides, okay, I'm going to commit on Thursday this week, or I think that it all kind of goes hand in hand. So it'll be interesting to see when Atkins pulls the trigger. It'll be interesting to see when Bussy pulls the trigger. But I think Atkins, flipping a fellow SEC West foe, which I know that's not going to be a thing anymore after this season, but, it's always a big win. A team that is one of the biggest games on your schedule this year. You got a big win over them last year when they, of course, won the West. I think it's a good, kick some dirt on them and say, hey, we're going to beat you on the field. We're going to beat you on the recruiting trail. We're going to beat you everywhere. Discourage them. I think it's a good thing. So you go flip Atkins, a blue chip recruit, top 250 guy in the class. It's a big time thing, especially in a position that you need depth at. We talk about linebacker. I know you've already got a couple guys committed to this class, but bring them in, folks, because we need more, and we need a lot more. You could literally sign 15 linebackers this recruiting cycle, and I would be fine with that because you need a lot of them. It's a position on this team currently, not a ton of depth. I like our top end guys, but then if people get banged up, what do you do? So it's I think it's a good thing that you bring in another linebacker. I do think the Aggies land Atkins. Like I said, when you see this, when you see the crystal ball start to roll in, I think that, like I said, more times than not, that means the guy's coming soon. So I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see when Atkins pulls the trigger there. If I don't think something's going to happen tonight, like I said, I'm recording at 7, so we'll figure that out. But I don't think it's coming tonight, but I definitely think it's coming soon. And it's a big get. So like I say, you don't get any commits, as I said to this point. No commits from the pool party, but definitely a lot of positives surrounding the weekend as a whole. And that's what I wanted to see. Now, was I hoping to get some commits this weekend? Of course. Every content creator loves a commitment because it's easy, good stuff to talk about that people are excited about. But definitely, like I said, not upset at all about not landing a commit because all of the vibes, a lot of 2025 kids making some positive comments about how things went well. They had a great time in College Station. So no, folks, at the end of the day, I'm not concerned with no commits to this point. And, let's say a kid commits on Tuesday that was at the pool party. I look at that as a pool party commitment. I look at it just because they didn't pop over the weekend doesn't mean it's not part of the festivities of the big time Aggie recruiting weekend. So I think that a lot of positives are going to come from this weekend, as they generally do. And the only question mark left really is, when does Terry Bussey commit? I think it's coming up soon. I was a little shocked it wasn't this weekend, especially, but like I said, based off his comments. But I do think we're going to see a commitment from him coming sooner than later. And I do assume his pledge is going to be to the Aggies. So we'll see. I feel good about that. But Texas A&M recruiting is in a good spot, folks. Really is. You still have one of the best classes in the country. You have one of the best classes in the country based on average recruit rankings. So lots to look forward to. I think some commits are coming soon. I really do. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But once again, I look at this as another successful pool party. A lot of happy 2025 kids, and that's a big deal. You got to start bringing them in. So I think that's a big time positive for the Aggies after this year's pool party. Josh Pate, a guy who is a guy I really respect what he does in the college football world, put out a tweet, and it was talking about who was the most unpredictable team in the country. I think it's the Aggies, and a lot of people in the comments agreed with me. We're going to be talking about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. Most unpredictable team in the country, folks. I really think based on ceiling and floor, which is something we have talked about time and time again on Locked On Aggies, but the ceiling and floor of this team, I don't know if there's another team in the country that has a bigger differential. I mean, like you joke about a Georgia, right? Okay, Georgia's ceiling is 12 wins and their floor is 11. I mean, in all reality, like you look at schools like that. Now, you have some schools that are, boom or bust watch. I think like an Auburn's a good example of that. I think a Kentucky's a good example of that. Some teams that are talented, not getting a ton of love, but have the roster to potentially put together a good season. But I think when it comes to who fits the bill best of the most unpredictable team in the country, I think it's the Aggies in a landslide. When I saw this tweet from Josh Pate, that was the first thing I was like, I bet these comments are flooded with people saying Texas A&M, which of course was reality. I mean, everybody, it was just Texas A&M, Texas A&M. Everybody was responding the same thing. So, I think unpredictability when it comes to a football team is a good thing, but I think it can also be a bad thing. I think you look at this roster, and that's what I wanted to talk about. I mean, the unpredictable nature of this team is based off the fact that you have the talent to be a national championship contender. It's going to come down to, does that talent turn in to wins? One of the best, like I've already said today, but I got to keep reiterating it because it is the most important thing about this entire team of the blue chip ratio. This roster is top 5 in college football. The coaching staff, if everything goes well, if Coach Petrino calls plays, Coach Fisher kind of lays off and just does the other things he needs to do as a head coach, and Coach Petrino is calling the plays, as I've said a lot, he is one of the most genius offensive minds in college football and has been for a long time. He has been succeeding, calling plays, even as a head coach for a long time. So, frankly, if that works out, if the hire of Petrino works out, he's calling plays, the Aggies are scoring points, the Aggies are moving the football, and the defense is as good as many anticipate, this team can be a national championship contender. This team can win the SEC West, win 9-10 games. If that doesn't pan out, if you have some turmoil between the coaches, you have some upset Petrino because Coach Fisher doesn't agree with what the play's calling, stuff like that happens, or Connor Wigman doesn't turn in to take that sophomore year jump that many expect. If those kind of things happen, if the offensive line isn't who we think it, like we talked about with the defensive line, if they can't stop the run, these are things that can lead to a 5 or 6 win season, which I don't think is outside the realm of possibility, just purely based off the fact that a lot of stuff has to come together for the Aggies to be good. Now, I think, to me, the realistic floor for this team, I think, is 7 wins. I think a bad season is 7 wins. But a couple things don't go your way, and you win 6 games. You win 5 games. I mean, you look at last season, nobody thought Texas A&M was going to have a 5-7 year, but look what happened. I mean, this team is unpredictable, and they're going to be unpredictable this season just based off the fact of this talent. We don't know how it's going to turn out. You look at Connor Wigman. I mean, he comes in, plays in a handful of games last season, and it's kind of like, okay, he was good. He looked great, but what's he going to do as the guy? What's he going to do as the starter? I think the LSU game, the final game of the season last year, where Wegman went and beat the Bayou Bengals in Kyle Field, I think that's a step in the right direction. It's a good note to end your season on. But at the end of the day, you got to find out, is he going to take that leap? And I just don't know. I've been very confident saying that I think he will, but that's one of the bigger keys to this season is, how does this talent develop? Are the Shamars going to take a step forward? Are we going to see Walter Nolan become a guy? Do any of these true freshmen step up and do something special? I mean, there's just a lot left to be decided with this Texas A&M football team. And if it goes well, I think this team, as I said, can contend for a national championship. If it doesn't, I think it could be really rough, and then we could be having conversations of what does the coaching staff look like going forward. But, folks, I mean, this is going to be a fun season. It's one of those seasons where it can be like stubbing your toe and you win 6 games and it hurts and it's hard to sleep at night. Or it can be a season where you go out there and you make a magical run and win 10, 9, maybe even 11 games and make a run to a college football playoff appearance. I think That is the ceiling and floor of this team. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it pans out. And I don't think you're going to really have a feeling of what this team's going to do until after the Miami game. I mean, the New Mexico game, folks, I mean, that's going to be an utter boat race. We know, we know that one's not going to be all that interesting. But you can learn a little bit about the team there. What's the offense going to look like? What's Wigman going to do? Can you stop the run? You're going to learn those things in a game like this. But you're going to really find out about this team when the Aggies head to Miami to take on the Miami Hurricanes. That's when you're going to find out about this team. And then, of course, week 4, first SEC game, Auburn comes to town. I think that's when you're really, really going to know if this team has it to be a team that can compete to win the SEC West. So, folks, it's going to be a fun season. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping that this week there is a ton of fun recruiting stuff to talk about. Hopefully we get some commits this week. That would be great. I hope we see that happen. But to reiterate the pool party stuff, I think it was a good outcome. We'll see if the Aggies land anybody in the 2025 class. But the pool party went well. And I do think Texas A&M is the most unpredictable team in college football this season. But, folks, I think Texas A&M football is in a good spot right now on the recruiting trail and in a good spot right now for the upcoming 2023 football season. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. I really appreciate you all tuning in. I hope everybody had an outstanding weekend. We have another fun week of Locked On Aggies coming up here, so I really do appreciate you all tuning in. If you all could head over and subscribe to the YouTube, that helps out a lot. Those of you that listen on other platforms, you got to remember I am everywhere. I'm wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on YouTube, so you can find me wherever, depending on what's going on throughout your day. So like I said, really appreciate you all tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow.